Hello everyone, thanks for coming outside me today. Today I would like to talk about something that frustrates me a little bit, and that is the need to upgrade components or change components, and particularly when it comes to high-end arrows and high-end bows. This is something that seems to be kind of happening more and more in the industry, and it's frustrated me a little bit more and more as I see more and more cases of it crop up. People feeling that they need to upgrade arrow components or they need to change shims on their bow. I just think that is unacceptable in today's day and age. When I'm spending $1,000 on a flagship level bow, it better work right out of the box. I might need to do a little rest adjustment, and of course I'm going to have to put the cams in time right from the factory because string stretch and so on. I have no problems with that. But I'm talking when I'm shooting and I can't get a correctly spined arrow to tune right, I have to change top hats or shims or this, that, and the other thing just to get everything to work. It's $1,000. It should work right from the get-go. And that's why I've always shot elite bows for the past several years, because I've owned 7 of them and I've never had one that just couldn't tune with a little bit of rest adjustment, shooting a correct spine, correct point weight, and watching my grip, just like I do with every other bow. There's no yokes I've had to mess with, no top hats to flip around, all this sort of stuff. If I spend the money, I want it to work right. The biggest thing that's been frustrating me though is with arrows. Everybody seems that they need to upgrade to a stiffer component or a stronger material like brass or stainless. I don't see the need. I would just much rather shoot a better stock arrow that comes with better stock components. And that's why I've always shot gold tip, and now I've even moved into victory arrows because, quite frankly, for a standard diameter arrow, I don't think you can beat their component system. So let's unpack this a little bit. I got 4 different inserts here from 4 different major manufacturers. I got one from Carbon Express, one from Gold Tip, one from Easton, and then the last one from Victory. And I think there are severe cons to a lot of the other ones other than this victory insert here. I'll do a couple of close-ups about what are the things that I'm talking with, in particular when it comes to insert adhesion, using hot melt, which is a very common glue to be used in shops as well as for people at home that want to fiddle around with different inserts and point weight styles. Using hot melt on an aluminum insert and a carbon arrow is very, very common, and I think this one takes the cake. So I try not to express it too much in public, but I have a loathing for Carbon Express insert systems and kind of Carbon Express arrows in general, but that's a different topic for a different time. Carbon Express inserts are basically just a smooth shank with a little bit of crosshatch grid in there. It's got one ring, but then it has this little collar right at the tip. And so I have a couple of arrows here. I pulled the knockout because it's a lot simpler to just push them in the knock-in than it is to tear out inserts. Here's an old Carbon Express arrow. You see here, I put it in the knock-in. It almost goes all the way in, and then there's this little ring, and that whole ring is the whole tension. This whole insert just slides in and out, no problem, right? It's not even friction. I mean, it's so loose in there. That ring right there at the end, right? You can't just push that in. You actually have to press it in with the glue. That's what's bonding the insert to the arrow. That's just asking for a failure, for it to be pulled out and left in a target, or to smash into the arrow itself and banana peel that back and just ruin your day when it comes to energy dump when you're in a hunting situation. I have no love for these inserts whatsoever. They're very short. They're 7/8 of an inch. They're coming out on my scale to about 10 grains. They're just not what I want to be putting on an arrow that I want to be shooting into a whitetail. The next insert we're going to look at here is Gold Tip, which I think has been one of the better insert systems on the market. This is just their standard stock aluminum insert, but their brass is built exactly the same. And that's something I didn't mention with the Carbon Express. You can't get a highly manufactured brass or stainless insert from Carbon Express. You're going to have to go to Ethics. I think that's a huge flaw in a system for an AND manufacturer. If you're going to be making high quality arrows, you should be able to make high quality components to fit almost every single one of your arrows. Carbon Express, to my knowledge, does not do such a thing. Gold Tip here has a lot of great deep grooves and ridges. It's got some flat spot. It's got a couple of bands up towards the front. It has a little bit of friction here, like the first ring there. You notice it's not going to pop out. Has great suction to it, and it goes right in nice and smooth. I've used Gold Tip inserts for years, and I never have these things pull out when properly used with hot melt. My biggest complaint about them, though, is that they're short. They're only an inch long. The Carbon Express is still shorter yet at 7/8, but the Gold Tip one is only an inch long. I've never had a problem with that, like causing adhesion issues, but I have had them bend before. You know, I miss an arrow and I hit a rock in the yard, or I shoot through a deer and it bends the insert. The arrow itself is fine and that's okay, but it's kind of a pain that I know that I'm losing that energy when I bend an insert that's just this short. Also, I forgot to mention that Gold Tip insert runs at about 12 to 14 grains depending on the scale. Mine's not super accurate. Again, not a really heavy insert system for an aluminum one, but it's still better than the Carbon Express. Moving up in weight and size, you get to an Easton. This is an inch long. Really like how this insert is built, has many deep grooves and ridges and cuts that are actually coned into the insert itself. The problem is that they're backwards. They're coned to go, when you push the glue in, they cone in to go into the actual arrow itself. The issue with it is they should be coned the opposite direction. Now this arrow here is not an Easton arrow, it's an old deer crossing arrow that I use for junk to go shoot groundhogs and stuff with, but it's still a 244, very stiff on the inside. I've always had great adhesion in terms of the diameter of the inside of the shaft of Easton arrows, the standard size, to their insert system, but just that way that ridge is backwards makes no sense. And then up here in the top, almost half, definitely the first third, if not a little bit more, of the insert is just straight smooth shank. There's no cross hatching, there's no extra bands, so you're only getting adhesion on the back 2/3 of the insert, whereas at least with the Carbon Express you're getting adhesion the whole way through, even though it is pretty sloppy in its tolerance. And definitely with the gold tip you're getting adhesion all the way through. You're only getting 2/3 adhesion out of this insert, so basically that knocks it down to 2/3 of an inch in terms of what is actually getting adhered to the arrow. So as much as I would love to say this is a great insert system, weighs about 16 to 18 grains, it just doesn't cut it for me because I'm only getting 2/3 of the adhesion that I want on the shaft. So last but definitely not least, and probably the reason why I've gone to shooting standard diameter Victory arrows this year, is their insert. This is a 22 grain aluminum insert. You combine that with a 125 grain point, you basically have 150 in the front of your arrow. Right? You're basically shooting 100 grains with a 50 grain insert, right? That's basically what this is. It is combining multiple things in terms of the rings. You have a flared cone on the back. You have 2 bond rings on the smooth shank, so that doesn't completely eliminate the smooth shank for being part of the adhesion. Then it cones up into a cross hatch, and then you have a band up here at the front. This is 1.5 inches long. You get great contact the entire way through the shaft. There is no wobble, and that cross hatch really starts to add some grip and friction. And then of course you get the glue down in all of the cross hatches, all their grooves. You smash that sucker in and it is never going to pull out. I'm very impressed. I did not know until this year the Victory inserts were built this way. I thought they were significantly shorter like the gold tips. As soon as I saw this, I knew I was going to be switching. I've never had one of these pull out using hot melt, definitely never with epoxy. I love the extra weight to them, using the multiple different ways of adhesion. If you used a cyanoacrylite or an epoxy, I would wager you'll never get one of these out of a standard diameter arrow. So real quick too, since I've been talking about the inserts of arrow builds and talking about people have to change things out in order to get nocks to fit and inserts to be the right weight they want and the shaft to be the right GPI that they want, Victory arrows come with Bohning double lock nocks, which is my personal favorite standard size nock on the market. I shot them out of my Easton Axis when I used to shoot those arrows in the X size. Of course, these are in the standard size here for this 245. Absolutely love these nocks. They have fit so much better on so many different serving diameters, center serving diameters of so many different string manufacturers than I've ever had any other type of nock. Being a gold tip shooter for such a long time, I used a lot of the standard gold tip GT nocks that you would find in their hunting arrows, and those were pretty tight on some of the center serving. So I shoot a lot of 60X strings. I shoot now a lot of Wicked Threads custom strings, both based here in Pennsylvania. Like support the little guys here that are local to my home state. And with those gold tip nocks, it was just a little bit too tight of a nock fit. I'm really particular about that because it really affects my tune and how the arrow comes off the bow repeatably each and every single time. As soon as I switched to a Bohning double lock nock, which comes stock and standard on a Victory arrow, I stopped changing all of my gold tip nocks over to the double lock, and I just moved to shooting a Victory arrow. In terms of the price point and everything, it's exactly where I want it. We sell the 6000 straightness, which would be like the Hunter line from Gold Tip, for like 60 bucks a dozen. We sell the Hunter line for about 75 a dozen. That's cut and insert and all the labor for you. So saving 10 to 15 bucks for a dozen arrows. Sure, these are the VFTKO models, so they're a little bit more expensive because I'm a spoiled archery brat. But if you're going out for a regular diameter arrow and you want a heavier one, this is a 9.7 in a 300 spine. A lot of people shooting 300 spine arrows these days with all the big heavy FOC arrow things going around. You'd have a really big bulky tank of an arrow with a lighted nock and the 125 grain Magnus broadhead. I'm shooting 485 grains at about 270 feet per second out of my Elite Kure. That is a pretty lethal hunting arrow. I don't see any reason to change. I'm glad that I discovered this insert system. I really am. I know it sounds strange, but when you think about adding 22 grains up front without even trying, that's just the business stock that comes right from the factory. No shelling out extra money for better components. If you're tired of having to change for better components because the ones in your current manufacturers suck, I would strongly take a look at Victory. So anyways, that's all for this video. If you have any further questions about building stock arrows and finding better components from stock companies, follow the links in the description below. Hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, send me an email, and yes, you can even leave a comment here on YouTube. Hope you're able to get outside, enjoy the sport of archery hunting if you so choose. Definitely enjoy God's beautiful, sunshiny creation, and we'll get to see you next time.